Okay, it's a quick little video about how to prepare artwork for doing laser engraving, specifically with the masking tape. So here we've got a serial plate for the DeWalt drill. This goes alongside the video of how to make a model drill. I'm going to just run through a few little techniques in Photoshop just to get this good for printing. Now, just so you know, the idea is when you put an image into 2D design, a black and white image, black is going to be engraved and white is going to be not engraved. There is an element of grayscale, so in other words, if it's grey, it'll get half engraved. But as you can see, this needs to be changed into something suitable. So it's correct way around, so the black's black. Sorry, it's the other way around. The text wants to be black and the background wants to be white. So just going to start off by copying it, bring it into Photoshop. Incidentally, when you bring something into Photoshop, having copied it into the tray, you'll see that the actual pixels of the image you're copying are there. That's quite small, so could go tenfold and it should be fine, or perhaps even 5 times as much, but you know, make it nice and big. So when I paste it in, it'll be tiny. Control V, by the way, is a quick way of pasting, for those of you who don't know, and then you can scale using this. I can drag it like that and it will squish about. If I hold down Shift, it locks the aspect ratio, and hold down Alt, it'll scale from the center. So that's quite a quick way of getting something central. Okay, so now you've zoomed in, you can see it's really quite poor quality. There's lots of pixelation, that kind of thing. So a few little techniques to reverse it, or get that better. So first of all, going to reverse it. Just so you know, you can do that quick and easily there, invert. So the black becomes whitish and the yellow becomes blue. We don't need the color information, so you can either just turn it into a grayscale image at this point, or you can delete out the information by going hue saturation, turning the saturation right down. I'm going to just do grayscale like that. So it's asking me if I want to flatten it, merge these two layers. There's nothing there of any interest, so I'm going to just flatten that, get rid of that. Right, now, next step, I'm going to just straighten it out. So grab the selection box like that, image, adjust, edit, transform, distort. Okay, and with that, you've got these handles in the corner. Should be able to just tweak it manually and get those rounds right in the edge. Now you might find the first one you've adjusted, by the time you've adjusted all of them, it might not be still in the position you want it to be. So just check, go back to the first one when you've got the other 3 adjusted. So you can see that one is zoomed up. Now the handle's off screen here, so quick and easy way of zooming out is Control minus. Okay, Control plus, zoom in, Control minus. So I can just get to that handle without having to cancel this transform. So yeah, let's just get this all the way like that. That should do. Okay, get rid of that marquee by going deselect or Control D. I'm going to try and avoid using the keyboard shortcuts without mentioning them. Get all into the habit of using them. They're very quick. So you'll notice that a lot of them do just list what the keyboard shortcut is on the side. Right, it's a clever little technique to make it a bit neater. Now, a lot of people who know Photoshop say, okay, if you want to make that just black or white, then you use this thing called threshold. That works, but it's a bit messy. I mean, this text, not the cleanest looking text. It's going to be hard to recreate something that's just not there, so obviously it was a low image quality in the first place. But there is a technique that's quite useful for rounding off blurry, nasty kind of imagery. So best thing to do is just make it contrasty in the first place. I find if you click this Use Legacy, it'll actually just make the power a bit stronger. It's the old way of doing it. I don't know why they've adjusted it like this. It's just a bit more current. I don't know. But anyway, use legacy just makes it more effective. So play around with the brightness and contrast, trying to bring up the background so it's all white without losing too much definition. So as you can see, it's kind of getting towards what we had in the threshold. Now my technique here is just a way of just rounding it off a bit more. So what I'm going to do is go filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. Now that's just a kind of basic, quite versatile blur. Will just give you all the control and power basically. So you should be able to just blur it out until you lose all that pixelation and nastiness. Now you're thinking that looks worse, but now if I go back to contrast, you'll see it just cleans it up and rounds everything up a bit, so it'll just make it a lot more just a lot neater and less bitty. It's particularly good if you've got a low pixel image in the first place. So the one that came in is quite pixelated. It just rounds off all the pixels by blurring it, but you've got to make sure it's a bigger image in the first place for that to work. So almost to the point where that could do. I mean, we've lost a bit of lettering here. If you look at the original, it's a bit bitty there anyway. Could possibly recreate it or rather tweak it to get it working, but really that www's really lost. To be really fussy, the drill model I've got is not a 988. It's more or less the same serial plate. We could change it to 725. Just a quick little idea. Just a few little basic ways of editing text and whatnot. Now, really I don't want to mess up this layer, so I could erase stuff out, change it, but if I wanted to kind of tweak it, it's best to do it on a separate layer. So this button down here, you see now we've got a new layer on top of the other one. Now, another shortcut is to hold down space when you're zoomed in. It's just an easy way of navigating around the work that you're doing without having to zoom out all the time. So Control plus, I can go straight into there, space, move it around, Control minus. Of all these bits, obviously I've lost a lot of this, so I might just rewrite this text. These lines are a bit shonky. You can tell with a straight line, it's nice and clean. A lot of this is good, but maybe if I'm going to change that to 725, I'll change all this. So I'm going to recreate all this and maybe just get a DeWalt logo that's higher res and just pop it in there. So first of all, and if you're absolutely certain you want to get rid of this, then you could just do it on the same layer, but it'd be quite good to keep this for reference. So I'm going to just white over all of the stuff that I'm going to lose. For purposes of this thing, a lot of these images, I mean, that's come out alright and it's quite specific to this thing. I'm not going to recreate it. All of that looks fine, especially when you're looking at the kind of detail level that laser etch and a paint spray is going to do. So wouldn't worry too much about that. But this and this I'm going to get rid of. Now I've got a square here. I've got a different way of selecting. There's another video on DTTV that shows about selecting in a bit more detail, but just as a summary, I want to add to this selection. Hold down shift and you get that little plus. So I can just go like that, keep the litter bin, keep that little box. I'm just gonna white all of that out. So if you go like that and then go edit fill or shift F5, the newer Photoshop's put this content aware, which is a kind of clever way of like interpreting what kind of busy background it. But anyway, we just want a plain color, so we're just going to go foreground color here and it fills it. Now bear in mind that is that, so you might want to just kind of put white fill, because if you get a lot of layers, can be quite confusing. You can't quite recognize it from a little thumbnail, so quite often it's good to just label it as you go. You can turn it off and on, so it just means I can just use it for reference if I'm going to fill it in. I might want to just turn it right down, so I've just got a very faint outline of where the old text can go, so making the new text makes it a bit easier. Right, new text, I'm going to just put on a new layer. This little button here will swap the background and foreground colour, so I can go straight in with black. And I'm going to just draw in these rectangles with a marquee tool. So you see it's not perfectly straight, but that'll do. So that way, remember the fill, Shift F5, foreground colour, boom. Now, if I use this arrow here, I'll move it around. So I can just move it down to there. Don't want to do that, Control Z. But what if I just duplicate it? Well, if you hold down Alt, you'll get this double arrow. Hold down Shift at the same time, that will lock it to whichever direction you're moving it to. So it'll be in line. So a nice quick way of making that line there. Now, scale. Bring that down. Put that there. Enter will just confirm that. Deselect as well. Remember it's here. Control D, deselect. Didn't actually say it there, but there you go. Wasn't looking in the right place. Deselect. Control D. There you go. Right. Let's find a DeWalt logo. That'll do. It's probably fine. In fact, let's go for that because it's black and white already. Just so you know, in fact, I'll use this one just so that you're aware how to turn yellow and white to black and white, and yellow and black to white and black. Copy image, nice and big. It's not too big there. Right, there's a number of ways to get rid of that black border. You could just draw a marquee around it, select inverse, which is Control I, Shift Control I, sorry, and then delete, gets rid of all that. That's probably the easiest way, and then Control D. Brightness contrast will just bring it up to black and white. Being a black and white image, it's already lost the yellow anyway, so I'm going to click that. That'll do. So, just going to scale it. Hold down Shift because the whole thing has got the right aspect ratio. In other words, it's not squished already. DeWalt don't like their logo being squished. So let's just nudge it with the arrows, the cursors. Just move it up like that. Okay, you can always turn it off just to see if it's in the right place. Could be perfectionist and get it in the right place, but that'll do. Right, text now. Okay, I'm still in black, so it should be alright. Now, just from experience, it could be really fussy, but this looks quite like Arial black. So there it is, Arial, and you should have the options here. Bold or black. Let's try bold firstly. DC725. Okay, it's tiny. So you Control A, you select it, or it's a bit too hard to select it with the cursor, and then bring it right up to something like 72. Bigger still, 150, 180. There you go. Oops. Let's try 165. 180 was right, I reckon. Right. Probably want that one in black. It's just even more chunky than the bold. That'll do. Anyway, as I'm saying, it's a quick little replication of what we had. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm going to just go with what is written on the drill in front of me. So this time 180, bold this time. So it's type 10. I'm going to put caps lock on. Alt, hold down, just duplicate it. It's a bit big for this time, so edit, transform, scale. Bring it down to about that. Now, need to change the text, so text tool. Right, this is 18 volt DC, and then it's got got caps lock on already, VDC, then it's got a DC symbol, diameter symbol, we'll use that, 13 millimeters, and 400 watts, that will do. Now, I could have carried on that same character there, if I press enter. My eyesight needs to, what does that say? Tell. Let's just write 0 to 500. Min. Caps lock off. 0 to 1700. Min. Okay. That we could possibly do smaller anyway, so and just cut it and put it on a new layer and then change it. What I was going to show you is if you go to character there, that would have changed the line spacing, so I could have just lined it up there, but as it happens I'm going to just put it on a new layer. No, actually changed my mind. It's let's put it back just so you know. So that one. Okay, so I'm just going to make smaller text, this one here, so let's try 100. That's good, and then just as a guideline, the point size of the text that you've done, the line spacing is kind of the same relative, so a recommended kind of line break for a typical bit of paragraph text is going to be the same number. So this looks a bit bigger than typical paragraph text, so let's try 150. Maybe more. Let's try 200. That'll do. And then just a bit of text at the bottom. So we've got right. Just need to get the drill in front of me. So yeah, smaller text still. Just so you know as well, we've got a few other settings here. This one will actually shrink the text for you without having to scale it. It's quite useful if you're writing a lot of text in as one. So I've got one body of text here, different settings. You can actually just shrink it. Obviously if you do it too much, it doesn't look like the same font. So another way of doing that is, I reckon we can get away with 90, but also we use, where is it, this one, which is basically the spacing between each text. Obviously that's getting a bit crunched together, but the space is right down like that. Probably less than that, so let's try that, but then let's make it 72 or 75. There you go. And then caps lock again. That is a capital O. And then right. Okay, just put that all slightly less. So if you go back to this one, obviously we set it as specific. If you put it auto, it'll just choose a suitable line break. In this case, didn't want to have that one, so can I just select these? Yeah, okay, let's just put another carriage return on that one. There you go. Yeah. Now, knowing that's 75, auto will be 75 as well, so put 90. Or maybe 100. There you go. Right. Pretty much there. I'm just going to put that white fill back on. And obviously we don't want to have this edge engraved around there. That might be useful when you bring it into 2D design, just to get a cutting guide if you need it. But I just reckon you could just replicate it. In fact, instead of using this cutting guide or this image as a cutting guide, I'm going to just measure it in real life and then just recreate that rectangle in 2D design as a means of cutting it. Anyway, on this white fill layer, I want to fill outside of this box. So what I could have done, instead of adding to it, out will subtract from it. Like that. I've just missed the top of that serial. So I can add to that. That's one way of doing it. Oops, subtracted that. Yeah, it's confusing when you've got an add and a subtract together. Anyway, another way of doing it is just to select like that, and then edit, select, inverse. Where's that? That one. Shift Control I, by the way. That will just reverse the selection, so you've got all of this selected now. Now, because we're doing the same thing in the same position in the same layer, I'm just going to swap that. So the foreground colours like that. Shift F5. It's already on foreground colour, so there you go. You could carry on. You probably find these symbols, they're standards, if you can be bothered to do it. But to be honest, for a spray job serial plate like that, it's probably fine like that. So just make sure you can save it as is, as a PSD with all the layers. If you so did I. Probably worth it. Otherwise, I'm going to just flatten it all out and save it as a JPEG, or save it. Make sure it's good quality. Now, one other thing you've got to bear in mind when you bring it into 2D design, let's just put it in the right place. So make sure it's nice and big. It is a big file in the first place anyway. One other thing you'll notice when you bring it in is the image size here is massive. If I wanted just to make it smaller without losing that detail, I want to uncheck that. This one here, by the way, just keeps the proportions the same. Here you notice they are not changeable, so the pixels will stay the same, which means it can't really, if it's resampling it, resizing it, it's squish it if you change the proportions, so it automatically loses that anyway. So we're going to go for about 6 centimeters, 6 by 4 or something like that. I can scale it in 2D design, just makes life a bit easier, and you can see it's really detailed now. So 2D design. And hopefully you should even, you can just import file here, ignore that, and serial plate. So you can actually choose the size it comes in, or you can just scale it as it comes in anyway. So you might want to get your cutting guide. So let's say I haven't actually measured this, but it looks like it's about 45. By 30, I don't know, 30. That'll do. I might want to put 3mm radii on it, so that one there. So this one, 3mm. Either side like that. Now, when you come to cutting out your graphic, you might want to just use this graphic straight onto masking tape. Now, if you've applied it to your model, if it's flat and parallel with the bed of a laser, that's fine. But the one I had a bit of curve on it. So basically I wanted to apply it to a substrate, in my case black card, and then have double-sided tape on the back of it. So I just stuck that almost like a sticker straight onto the drill model. But it's something to bear in mind. If you've got a graphic or a curve or something like that you want to do in 2D design or Photoshop, as you've got a black and white etch like this, you're going to have difficulty if you're going to apply it onto the model and then laser etch it if it's not flat and level with or parallel with the bed. So think about that. If you've got some really complicated graphics like this, there's no way I'm going to unpeel this masking tape and then apply it to a curved drill and then spray onto it. So that's one of the limitations we've got. We've got a machine that goes into the laser cutter that will rotate a round object, but it's only round objects that can work for. So it's something to consider when you're making these models. If you do want to put a graphic on a curve, you might have to just tape it on, or it's got to be a simple enough graphic just to be able to unstick the masking tape in one go. But that might be a difficult job if it's, well, certainly if it's any more complicated than just the DeWalt logo there. So there you go. Remember also, when you're coming to do this, you're going to do this in two parts. So firstly the etch, which is the image that I brought in. Sim or I will show you the best settings for what you need to do. And then obviously you're going to cut out that part that you've done with this thing. So you have this selected on card 20, and then you've got a special setting for the etching on that. Anyway, I hope that was of use to you. Give us a shout if you've got any other queries about how to produce graphics. It's just a quick little lowdown on a few techniques in Photoshop. Thanks very much.